Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Maya Trabulsi, and thank you for joining us. San Diego City Council members are advancing a $25 minimum wage for workers in the tourism industry. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says it follows similar measures adopted in LA and in Long Beach.
Unionized hotel workers and their allies rallied outside City Hall ahead of the first meeting of the council's Cost of Living Committee. First item on the agenda, a $25 minimum wage for hotel workers, event center staff, and janitors in the city's tourism industry.
They say in San Diego there are no neutrals here. You'll either be a union man or a thug for the hoteliers. Which side are you on, council? Which side are you on?
Unions in San Diego have been testing the limits of their power with increasingly ambitious policy goals. Dozens of hotel workers told the committee they can barely afford to get by, while wealthy chains like Marriott and Hyatt make billions in profits. But hotel owners told a different story, one of struggling businesses and rising expenses that hit locally owned independent hotels the hardest.
The effects of the pandemic remain. Hotel occupancy is still below the pre-pandemic level from 2019, and occupancy is what drives employment. San Diego's already having a hard time competing for price-sensitive conventions like Comic-Con that's only committed for 2 more years here in San Diego.
Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera, who brought the proposal forward, said businesses have predicted doomsday scenarios before, but they never seem to come to pass.
We're open to dialogue with the industry. What I've asked, though, is that they not tell me that the sky will fall. Because just to be totally blunt, it's the same argument every time. Doesn't matter what decade we're having the argument. Every time we talk about increasing wages for workers, making things fair for workers, they tell us the economy will break.
The committee voted unanimously to move the proposal forward. Elo Rivera's staff will now do an economic study and draft an ordinance that will come back to the committee in June. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
For the second day, tens of thousands of UC San Diego health workers were back on the picket lines today. 2 unions are involved, both claiming unfair labor practices. They represent several professions, including mental health workers, physician assistants, and custodians. Our media partner KGTV was out there, and workers told them one major concern is low staffing levels.
People are going elsewhere, and that's unfortunate. You know, I've seen the most job openings at UC that I've seen in my history, and you know, we'd like to keep good people and keep helping our patients.
Today marked the second day of one strike and final day of another. Both unions say they are ready to resume negotiations once the strikes are over.
I am tracking a cooler and rainier forecast here as we head throughout both Friday and Saturday. The cooler weather will be Friday and Saturday. The rain will move in for Saturday and Sunday. So yes, not a very spring-like forecast here as we head into the weekend, but I will say it will be mild and it will be breezy, but overall watching out for the cooler and rainier weather. I'll update that forecast coming up.
The tracks on the bluffs of Del Mar are part of a vital rail corridor connecting San Diego to the rest of the nation, but eroding bluffs and rising sea levels because of climate change threatening that. Tomorrow, SANDAG could narrow down some options for moving the tracks inland. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wynn explains.
Every day, hundreds of people and millions of dollars worth of goods move through these tracks in Del Mar. It's part of the 351-mile Los Angeles, San Diego, San Luis Obispo or Lausanne Rail Corridor. It's also San Diego's only rail connection to Los Angeles and the rest of the world. So anytime there's a bluff collapse disrupting service, it's not only an inconvenience for commuters, but also a major economic impact for the region.
And it's important to the military, too, because it's a strategic railway.
Lisa Heebner is the board chair of the San Diego Association of Governments, or SANDAG. She says it's essential to make the rail line safe and stable, and that could mean moving it inland.
We're seeing dangers on the cliffs all up and down the coast in California.
According to a county grand jury report, between August 2018 and February 2019, there were 6 collapses along the Del Mar Bluffs. Because of Del Mar's steep topography, tunneling is the only way to move the tracks inland. The staff has narrowed the options down to 4 from the more than a dozen alternatives. According to Sandag's value analysis study, these 4 are the cheapest options.
The current options are slightly tweaked from the ones released last summer. The most notable is this tunnel option, which goes around most of Del Mar Fairgrounds. The previous one cuts through the fairgrounds.
The Del Mar Fairgrounds has objected to tunneling underneath the fairgrounds, saying construction would interfere with the San Diego County Fair for many years. The other 2 options involved tunneling under the city of Del Mar. Residents have opposed these, citing environmental, noise, and vibration concerns, along with the effect on property values. And the 4th option was added, leaving the tracks where they are and reinforcing the bluffs. Tomorrow, Sandag's board will vote on which of the 4 to move forward to the next stage. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
For 10 years, Cardinal Robert McElroy has been the head of the Roman Catholic Diocese of San Diego. He has led nearly 1.4 million members in matters both spiritual and secular, such as immigration and environment. In a few weeks, he will become head of the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne says he'll be just a few miles from the White House and from Capitol Hill.
He became San Diego's first cardinal. And now Robert McElroy is leaving to lead the Archdiocese in Washington, D.C.
It has been a great grace for me being here, and part of my heart will always be here in San Diego when I'm in Washington or wherever I am.
McElroy held a final news conference with San Diego media on Thursday, first speaking about the health of Pope Francis.
Throughout the world, people are raising their voices in prayer for the Pope and praying that God will be with him, help him in the suffering, give him peace and give him strength and give him healing.
McElroy shared that Francis appears to be making a recovery.
I'm very happy for that personally, and I know that so many people who have looked upon this Pope as a man who has brought a sense of real pastoral commitment and depth to the life of the Church.
And he said he hopes he will be leader of the Church for some time to come.
And continue to give that message to the world, which is in so much tumult and conflict now, that the Pope Francis' message of love and compassion and care and considering everyone equal is especially needed in our world at this time throughout the world.
McElroy is considered one of Pope Francis's most progressively like-minded allies. In the past, McElroy has called President Trump's threats of mass deportations of immigrants incompatible with Catholic doctrine.
The question of coming into churches and other places of worship, and frankly coming to schools in the same way, is a deeply moral question. And the reason it hasn't been done is because when those places become targets of ICE raids, it makes everyone uneasy. It strikes fear in everybody's heart.
He says the threats act as a deterrent to people going to church and worshiping. McElroy hopes to continue his message of compassion with the Catholic community in Washington and the world. He will remain in the San Diego Post until March 11th, when he will be installed as the Archbishop of Washington. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
It's not unusual for new presidents to sack the nation's 93 U.S. attorneys and hire new ones aligned with their own priorities. San Diego U.S. Attorney Tara McGrath was one of them. But she told KPBS's Amitha Sharma that the Trump administration's shift in goals is so dramatic that public safety is at risk.
Why did you agree to speak to KPBS today? I'm concerned about public safety and the changes that are occurring within the Department of Justice. And I'm also concerned about the way that federal public servants are being demonized and demoralized in the public discourse.
Tara, I want to get at public safety, but before I do that, you left on February 12th. Give me a sense of what life has been like for federal prosecutors in the San Diego U.S. Attorney's Office in the few weeks before you left.
I have worked for, I think, 8 attorneys general, and I've worked for Republican administrations and Democratic administrations, and I have never seen anything like the shift in the culture and temperature in the office in all of the years that I have worked for the Department of Justice. There has been turmoil and stress and demoralization and insecurity throughout the federal workforce in the last month, certainly within the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office included.
And what specifically is causing that turmoil?
Oh, it's not the change. People are used to change. We're used to working for one administration and then another. It's the shift in rhetoric about the lack of respect and appreciation for what federal employees do. What's the problem is the shift from certain law enforcement components and their expertise to doing work that's outside of the expertise.
So how does all of this affect public safety?
Public safety is impacted, I think, primarily in this region due to the shift in the direction of certain agencies being refocused on immigration enforcement. It's the movement of agencies like FBI, who normally are focused on domestic terrorism, responding to guardian complaints. A guardian complaint is when a teacher is concerned about how a student's behaving, or a neighbor is worried that their next door neighbor is spending too much time in his garage or making weird statements, and they report that information to the FBI, and the FBI generates this information in a guardian complaint. And then they go out and question, does this person have access to guns? Are they trolling on social media sites that could set off alarm bells? That's what a guardian call is. That's what the FBI does.
So they are preventing mass shootings?
They're preventing mass shootings. They're preventing terrorist attacks. They're preventing hate crimes. And they do that through generating intelligence, and they have an expertise in it, analysts and agents who track this information in our district and across the United States. And they do that day in and day out to keep track of who might be setting off alarm bells, and then they respond. Also equally, the ATF, for example, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, they are the preeminent experts in investigating wildfires. That's who we send out nationwide to figure out the source of a wildfire so we can prevent a wildfire from happening again if we understand why it occurred. Another example, the Drug Enforcement Administration. They're experts in identifying where a fentanyl dealer might have obtained the fentanyl, tracking it back to the smuggling operation and then the overseas cartel that funneled that toxic poison into our country. That's what DEA does. So we have these organizations that are specialized in really essential components of what keeps people in this country safe from mass shootings, from ghost guns, from fires, from fentanyl. And now those organizations are devoting significant time to immigration enforcement.
What you're describing sounds really scary. Where do you find hope in all of this?
Unquestionably, it's in the public servants. They're doing the work because they care about their neighbors and their federal citizens. And where I find hope is in those people, but also in engagement and people paying attention. The turmoil, the demoralization, and the lack of accountability that we have seen in the last month is not what Americans expect or deserve from their government. This is not the norm, and we can't allow ourselves to expect or accept this as the norm.
And that was Amita Sharma reporting. Public Matters is a partnership with KPBS, iNewsSource, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/publicmatters. An activist group is calling for a nationwide boycott tomorrow in what they're describing as an economic blackout. The organization, called the People's Union USA, is asking American consumers not to spend money for 24 hours. Lee Waldman explains.
No spending for 24 hours. That's the message coming from consumer activist group the People's Union. According to its website, the so-called economic blackout is intended to show them who really holds the power. The effort is led by John Schwartz, a father from New York and founder of the People's Union. In his online bio, he writes, "If we stand together, we don't just demand change, we create it." This boycott comes as some are protesting retailers like Target for rolling back DEI programs.
They respond to one thing: money, dollars. And so many of us around the country said, well, let's flex our dollar power, because that is the only thing they listen to.
Anna Tuckman, a professor of marketing at Northwestern University, has researched the impacts of company boycotts in the past. She says this one is unique because it doesn't target one specific company.
The call isn't to boycott a single brand or a single retail outlet, but it's rather calling for consumers to shut down their spending altogether.
Frustration over high prices at retailers is a driving factor for Friday's economic blackout, but Tuckman says she isn't sure what impact the spending boycott will have on the issue.
There are other factors that influences the prices that consumers face. So whether this boycott movement will have a measurable impact on prices consumers face going forward, my prediction is that it's unlikely that we will see a measurable impact.
In New York, I'm Lee Waldman.
Insurance companies in California are raising rates following devastating wildfires in the state last month. This week, California's insurance commissioner sat down with State Farm officials who are asking for an emergency rate increase starting May 1st. Suzanne Phan has details.
The devastating wildfires in Los Angeles could be one of the costliest disasters for insurance companies. California homeowners are also worried about their own insurance policies, says State Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara.
Our company's going to leave. Am I going to have an option? And am I going to get dropped?
About 3 weeks ago, State Farm General asked for an immediate emergency rate hike. That's the California subsidiary of State Farm. It wants to increase homeowner policies 22%, condo owner policies by 15%, and insurance for rental units by 38%. The state insurance commissioner sat down with State Farm representatives to get answers.
My immediate question to them was, can you pay out the claims for the current fire victims as we're operating on day by day? And that was, they assured me that they do have that.
The commissioner also wanted to know about State Farm's plan for the future.
I want to know, one, that if State Farm consumers are going to be asked to pay more, that we get some guarantees that, one, they're going to continue to grow their footprint and that they're going to stay in California.
State Farm General Insurance Company is the largest insurer in the Golden State. In May 2023, it stopped writing new policies in California. And in May 2024, it did not renew thousands of existing policies. Critics say State Farm has a lot to prove in order to secure a rate increase.
They've had rate increase after rate increase, and there's a process in California to make sure that the rate increases are fair and for Californians.
Consumer Watchdog says homeowners insured by State Farm could pay an additional $600 a year for their policies.
When you're looking at such a big number, up to a $600 increase, we just really think you need to go through the process and make sure that it's going to be the right number and fair for Californians and protect them.
President Trump says 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico are back on after delaying the plan earlier this month. In a post on Truth Social, the president said illicit drugs are being smuggled into the U.S. at, quote, unacceptable levels, and that the tariffs would force other countries to crack down on trafficking. A local expert told our media partner KGTV that it will likely affect local gas prices.
In terms of the U.S. oil market, Canada provides more of the exports of oil to the U.S. than Mexico does. So the impact on the Canadian oil will be bigger. It's projected that the cost of gasoline might go up as much as 9 to 20 cents a gallon.
The proposed tariffs are set to go into effect on March 4th. The president also announced that a 10% universal tariff charged on imports from China will be doubled. 2024 was a big year for foodborne illness in San Diego County. KPBS health reporter Heidi DeMarco explains what's behind a spike in cases and how to stay safe.
San Diego County reported 50 foodborne illness outbreaks last year, twice as many as in 2023. An outbreak is 2 or more illnesses from the same food source. One virus is behind most cases.
Norovirus ends up accounting for a fair majority of the cases that lead to these outbreaks.
The highly contagious virus causes vomiting, diarrhea, and stomach pain. It was linked to 15 outbreaks of contaminated raw oysters last year.
There was an outbreak associated with a shellfish grower in Mexico, as well as some in the north in the Washington area. And so as those oysters are then, shipped throughout the country and some of them landing here in San Diego, that's what drove some of those illness numbers.
Heather Bonomo's team investigates complaints from both doctors and the public.
Our team will do a little diet recall. We'll talk to them about everything they've eaten in the past few days and try to get more information to determine if their symptoms were caused by a food that they consumed from a restaurant.
Another culprit, raw milk. In 2023, it was linked to salmonella. Last year, health officials investigated it for possible bird flu. Beatty says a handful of cases helped them catch a statewide outbreak early.
When we realized that we had 4 people who had all said they drank raw milk, which is not that common to encounter, we knew that there was something going on, and we immediately shared that information with Heather's group and then started our process to coordinate the investigation. And we actually led the state in the very early on noticing that because of the tracking work we were doing.
Experts say simple precautions can lower your risk.
Air hot food, keeping it hot, cold food, keeping it cold, and washing your hands are really going to be some of the best preventative measures against foodborne illness, no matter where you are eating.
Preventing outbreaks isn't just up to health officials, says Mitzi Baum. She advocates for stronger food safety policies.
We all have a role to play in reducing illness and death associated with foodborne illness, and consumers need to be educated and informed as well.
If you think your food made you sick, health officials say it's important to report it. Tracking cases could help stop an outbreak. Heidi DeMarco, KPBS News.
I am tracking a cooling trend here as we head into the weekend, and even some rain chances will be moving in here as we head throughout your Saturday and Sunday. So overall here, primarily for Friday and Saturday, below average temperatures. This storm system will be working its way here across Southern California, and that'll bring in some noticeably cooler conditions here setting up for us. Also some rainfall here, a low chance of rain across Southern California. This second storm system between Saturday and Sunday, this is primarily going to impact the Northern California coast, and some interior mountain snow will develop here as we head throughout the weekend. But for tonight, I'm tracking low clouds mainly near the coast. Overnight temperatures will primarily be in the 50s. Across the rest of the region, we will see some 40s, even some 30s in the higher elevations. 51 tonight for Oceanside and Camp Pendleton, 55 downtown San Diego. Future track radar is showing that by early tomorrow morning, more cloud coverage will work its way into the forecast, and it's going to stick around here for a while. By about midday, still watching for partly cloudy skies, but during the late afternoon hours, right around 5 o'clock, that drive home to start the weekend, north of Los Angeles along the 5 up towards Fresno, some rain chances developing, and that rain's going to be sticking around throughout the entire evening there on Friday. The rain's going to slowly try to work its way to the south here. This is late Saturday into early Sunday, but overall, for the meantime, as we head into tomorrow, not really a good chance of rain, but look at these noticeably cooler temperatures in the 60s. 64, that's it for downtown San Diego. 64 as well for Oceanside. So yes, that cool down will last here as we head into the weekend. For the most part, it'll stay dry here across the coastal areas until Monday. Monday is going to be when we see the best chance of rain. And then after that here, as you look at the inland forecast, temperatures will also take a little bit of a dip as we head into the weekend. And once again, the best chance of rain will be on Monday. As you look across the mountains, we'll see some windy conditions there on Saturday with temperatures in the 40s, even temperatures around freezing there on Monday. And then across the desert, temperatures in the 70s.
What is in a name? Sometimes quite a bit if you go back in history, as Ken Kramer shows us in this fun fact about San Diego.
So here's my question for you. Do you think this man is handsome? Put yourself back in like 1870. What do you think? Handsome guy? His name, by the way, was Drury. Kind of hard to say, Drury Bailey, but he was a master of good timing.
Drury was right there where the stars were all aligned, and he was the man of the moment.
Yes, the man of the moment. He is responsible for this place, a little town in the mountains east of San Diego. Mr. Drury Bailey came out here from Georgia after the Civil War, historian David Lewis says.
The story goes that he got here and he said, man, I like this place, boys, I want to stay.
I want to stay here, he said, and he said that too, among others, his cousin Mike. Here's Mike. Mike, it was said, was more handsome. I don't know, you can decide, but that's what people thought anyway, and that's what Drury thought, and that's important, you see, because Drury turned out to be an important guy here.
Ultimately, he ended up here in this mountain valley and ended up founding the town.
Yes, he did. Drury founded the town and probably could have named it Drury or Drury Bailey Town, but no, he decided instead to name it for cousin Mike. And why?
The romantic version is that Mike was the handsomest man in camp, and that's why it got named that.
Drury thought, Mike's more handsome. I'm going to name this town for him. And so he did, and that's why today this place in the mountains is named for Mike. Mike Julian was his name. I don't know who was more handsome, but it's a lot easier name to say than Drury Bailey, don't you think?
Julian kind of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Well, yes, when you consider the alternative, that certainly is a fact about San Diego.
And Ken Kramer has a half hour of stories every week about San Diego. You can see them Thursday nights at 8 o'clock right here on KPBS. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.